about that is under your watch. It is about how under the presidency, the leadership, the championship that you are leading, it is our honor to say Women's Economic National Assembly. It's about when you said let's set aside 40% of our procurement to make sure that we open the path for women. People said, how do we then do legislation? But where is business? You said, no, business must also come to the party. How do they come? Today we have come to remove the hows, because those who have to make the decisions in the presence of our UN, Mayor Bekele Thomas, here with our president, accompanying our president as Wekona is being baptized, with the co-chairs, Ms. Futi Mtoba and Ms. Namhla Mniki. President, you championed how women shouldn't be killed. We rolled out the first and inaugurated the first year of the NSP. Our department is not about just how women should not be killed, but it's also on how they should provide for themselves, because in my mother tongue, women are providers. Now that they're even educated, they can provide and educate, and they need more skills to work together to make South Africa even a better and an even more beautiful country. Generation equality. One of the champions of the generation equality, not Beijing plus 25, is His Excellency, your good self. In your lifetime, we are going to see generation equality, because you made sure that it happens. We, together with all the excellencies, the ministers who are here, are not going to go back to the department to ask questions, but they are here as partners, and I got full information about how our DGs have signed MOUs to make sure that we get going and we get doing. So today is going to be a much, much better day and better days before 2030. But I am not here to speak on behalf of the champion, but yes, all the impediments that were blocking women to do things themselves. Draft bills are sitting, waiting for the 2nd of November, so that Parliament passes them and we focus on this work that we said we will all do. Ariem Mashemu. Mr. President, please come and address us.
Program Director, she's run away, she's not here anymore. Oh, there she is. Program Director. Ministers who are here with us, and in particular Minister Maite Nkwana Mashabane, who's a minister in the presidency in charge of the work that we do in government, women, youth, and persons with disabilities, the chairperson of the Women's Economic Assembly, Ms. Futhi Mtoba, deputy ministers who are also here with us, the MECs, and in particular the MEC of Economic Development, Mr. Pax Tau, Ms. Bekele Thomas, representing the UN Women, leaders of industries, and representatives of participating organizations, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a real joy and a pleasure to be here and to have been particularly welcomed by a lady who met me at the door. When I asked her who she was, she says, "I am the owner of this whole complex." Now, the story couldn't have been better for me. And I started probing and asking her many questions. And she confirmed that, yes, she owns all of this. And I looked at her and I say, as I'm checking you out, you are a woman. She says, yes, I am a woman. And I was delighted. So that's great. We gathered here today to participate in the inaugural Women Economic Assembly. The mere concept of an economic assembly is a rather compelling one. But when you add that it's a women's economic assembly, it becomes a powerful notion. Through this initiative, I think we should, all of us gathered here, be looking at this as a historic moment where together we are embarking on a journey that should reshape the economy of our country, particularly focusing on reshaping and changing the lives and the opportunities of millions of South African women who, by the way, are the majority segment of the South African population. The women are in the majority, and men are in the minority. Just so that we don't forget that. We have come together to give effect to one of the founding provisions of our Constitution, that our nation should be founded on human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of rights and freedoms for all South Africans. For as long as women shoulder the greatest burden of poverty, and in our country, we all know that the face of poverty is the face of a woman. For as long as they are more likely to be unemployed, for as long as they are paid much less than their male counterparts, and for as long as they struggle to start businesses, and for as long as they face continuous discrimination in the workplace, as well as harassment, for as long as women confront these and many other challenges, including death at the hands of men, including injury at the hands of men, our vision of an equal and just society will remain elusive. We will never be able to achieve it. The Women's Economic Assembly is a multi-stakeholder initiative to advance women's economic empowerment and inclusion. That's the beauty of this. Multi-stakeholder, involving a number of players in our country. And since the dawn of our democracy, We have worked to transform our society, to bridge the material divides between black and white, between men and women, between boys and girls, between urban and rural. That has been our mission. We have made significant progress in several of these areas, not least in the provision of healthcare, education, essential services, and infrastructure for the poor. But we have not fundamentally transformed patterns of ownership, of control, of management of our economy, and we have not really begun to touch on the most important part, which is getting the women of our country to play a meaningful role in the economy of their own country. The empowerment of women is therefore an integral part of our effort to achieve inclusive growth, create jobs, and expand economic opportunities for all. Because it is this, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, that for as long as we have not put the women in a position where they will play a key role, our economy cannot and is not firing on all cylinders. If a really powerful car, has 6 cylinders, ours is firing on 3 cylinders, even less. And if we just begin to imagine how we are not using the full throttle power of our economy, then this analogy I'm painting is a good one. It is a task that we need to take up, and it requires dedicated and unrelenting attention to empower the women of our country. Because in addition to being underrepresented in almost every part of the economy, in various areas, apart from, the community area and the household area and informal work, women are virtually absent as owners, as controllers, and as key managers in key sectors of our economy, be it in the engineering sector, be it in mining, be it also in agriculture, be it in steel, even in automotives. Women are absent. The unemployment rate amongst women is nearly 37%, compared to 32% amongst men. In 2018, women's median monthly earnings were 76% of those of men, meaning men were earning much higher. Now, these disparities are not only the product of a profoundly imbalanced economy, an economy that is not firing on all cylinders. They also arise from and contribute to gender inequality in society, the type of gender inequality that leads to a whole lot of other problems. 42% of children in South Africa live only with their mother, compared to 4% who live only with their father. The great divide in parental responsibility translates into a great divide in economic opportunity as well as circumstance. It is only when you look at it this way that you begin to see the real impact of the disparities. It is equally disturbing that of the reasons given by children aged between 7 and 18 for not attending school or for dropping out of school, 17% of females cited family commitments. It is the girls who have to go and look after a grandparent. It is the girls who have to go and look after the mother, and so forth and so forth. While only 0.3% of boys cite this as a reason for leaving school. As it is now, as I was talking this morning at a teacher's award ceremony, where I was saying almost 1 million children register for school nearly every year, give or take a few hundreds year after year. But just take the base figure of 1 million. At the end of 12 years, some 400,000 or so of them then finished school, or 450,000. 55% has fallen out of school. And we need to ask ourselves, who are they, where are they, and why did they stop going to school? And using this type of measure, we will find that the majority of them are girls. They drop out of school for all these reasons I've cited. It is therefore that the economic empowerment of women is not a technical exercise achieved merely by improving policy and introducing progressive programs. It is fundamentally a process of fundamental social transformation. And this is where the theory of change needs to be put into effect, where we begin to change things, not just talk about change, but where we effect change in a fundamental manner. It is where we bring about change in institutions, in every sector of the economy, and therefore everyone must get involved. All of us must get involved in this process. For it is the one process that is going to make this engine called South Africa to operate on all cylinders. Thus far, it has been operating at even 50%, less than 50% of its capacity. And there is another reason why this initiative, this economic assembly, is so important. The economic empowerment of women is one of the pillars of our national strategic plan of gender-based violence and femicide. By improving the economic circumstances of women, we are reducing their vulnerability to abuse as well as to violence. By being economically dependent on male partners, women have a far better chance of getting out of an abusive relationship. A woman that is in charge of her economic future is a woman with power over her own life. If we can ensure that women and girls have tangible control over their futures and well-being, then we will have achieved something great. If we can make sure that they will no longer earn less money, and this is one thing that really bothers me, that we have continued to be an economy where men earn much more than women, whereas they do, in many cases, they do exactly the same work. That type of discrimination has to come to an end, and we must all work together to bring it to an end, both in government as well as in the economy. Now, we can create a world if we take the commitments that are going to be made today in this assembly. We can create a world where women, girls, and men and boys can all thrive, because we've had an economy that has only focused on seeing men thriving and women being left behind. And the women of our country are now saying, no, we are no longer going to be left behind. In fact, we want to be in front, and I support the women for saying so. Now, to achieve this and many others, that's why a significant portion that national governments have allocated in terms of the funds that they've been allocated in the budget are directed towards implementing the National Strategic Plan over the next few years. So we are focusing at government level on making sure that women are fully empowered. This assembly builds on that commitment that we have made, bringing together key social partners to pursue a common national goal of inclusive economic transformation. There is huge unrealized potential in the design of industry, value and supply chains, and preferential procurement to empower women. And I'm sure that's what we are going to be talking about today. Every government department and public institution and private company can and should implement mechanisms to fast-track preferential procurement for women-owned enterprises. There is simply nothing difficult about it. All we have to do is just to do it and make sure that it gets done. For I always argue, you empower a woman, you are actually empowering the nation. You empower a woman economically, you are empowering her household. Because as a mother who cares for her family always comes first. As a man, there are a whole lot of other things that come first. The presidency, working with departments such as the Department of Women, Social Development, Small Business, Rural Development and Land Reform, and National Treasury, has mapped out a strategy to achieve 40% preferential procurement in the public sector, and many more and more departments are joining in. Current public procurement accounts for about 9% of GDP, which is about 500 billion rand annually. Of this amount, 12% went to women-owned enterprises in the first and second quarter of 2021. Now, I want to see many more rands going into the hands of women, because that's how it should be. Government, working together with industry, has started building the capability of women-owned businesses to submit proposals to provide goods and services in the public and private sectors. Around 1,300 women in the Eastern Cape, in the Free State and Limpopo have so far been supported to do business with the government through this extensive capacity building program. Now, I want to hear and see that it's 1 million women, it's 3 million women, it's 10 million women. 1,300 is a good start, but I often say to my colleagues in government, we must massify what we do. We've got to increase the number, because talking about 1,300 in a population of almost 60 million, it's peanuts. It's peanuts. I want more women to get involved in this. We've got more than 30 million women in our country, so let's get on with the task. Now, some of these women are women who are business owners, who have been trained in compliance and registration, who have been trained in procurement and regulatory framework, financial literacy, marketing, as well as access to market and finance and other number of opportunities. Now, this needs to be multiplied. And it's wonderful today that we've got industry players here, because what government has initiated, they can put to good effect, perfect it, and ensure that it is more broadly spread. It has been very encouraging to hear stories like that of Ms. Mapanga from Limpopo, who attended one of their capacity building workshops. her electrical engineering company doubled its annual turnover to the value of over 2 million during the COVID period. Just during COVID, 2 million rand turnover. Now I want to hear that going to 10 million. She shared that the first workshop she attended provided valuable information about different service offerings from various departments and organizations, especially on access to funding. Because she was exposed and participated in this process of training, she now has the wherewithal to know where to go to access funding. She now knows how to market. She says that self-employed women usually struggle to secure funding for their business and normally do not know who to approach. Now, by putting her through this process, we have empowered her. Through this work, we are building a pipeline of women who are ready to respond to procurement calls. And the same can happen for the private sector as well. We know that even as we expand procurement opportunities for women, particularly in government, it will never be enough to answer the need. So business as the key driver of economic growth in our economy, as well as a key driver to employment, needs to step forward. And today, the inputs that will be made here, I hope will be inputs that will demonstrate that business is now ready to step forward to get on with the task of empowering the women of our country. Business needs to deliberately and actively use industry value and supply chains as the key tools that they have in economic transformation. And this should not be seen as doing a favor to the women of our country. It is actually the process of opening up all the levers, yes, of your own company, the levers of our economy, and ensuring that South Africa really does get to work. Through value chain transformation, we can promote the development of small, medium enterprises that are owned by women, owned by youth, and by black people as well, who, as we know historically, were locked out of meaningful participation in the economy of their own country. Now, by giving them the opportunity to produce value-added goods and services, companies enable these small, medium enterprises to attract investment and employ more people in productive activities. In today's engagement, I look forward to the commitments and to the bold practical steps that the business community has already started taking, will be taking to advance women's participation in supply chains. There are several targets that we should seek to advance through these commitments and plans. And I'd just like to name a few. Firstly, to increase the number of women-owned enterprises within the sector. And I think it is wrong to have a situation where in a sector of our economy, we only have male players. It has become wholesomely wrong in every endeavor of South African life now to just have the same gender dominating in everything, whether in parliament, whether in political parties, whether in companies, in the boardroom. The world has embraced the notion of bringing women, empowering them. Now let us embrace that as well, so that even as we look at various sectors of our economy, we should have proper representation of women in those sectors. Secondly, we must establish an ecosystem for support for female-owned businesses. Because one of the problems that women have, like Ms. Mapanga was talking about earlier, was that they have no access, they have no knowledge, they have no way of knowing how to get assistance. Now, we should create that ecosystem so that it becomes the order of things, so that women are able yes, to have easier access to everything, markets, funding, assistance to run their businesses, and regulatory processes and all that. Thirdly, we must increase the employment of women and youth with set targets. We need to set the targets. There are still companies where it's an all-male club. And that now has to change. There are women now, where I used to be General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, used to be just men who work underground. Today, it is changing. We're seeing more and more women working also underground. We met yesterday with the presidents of Botswana, Namibia, and Mozambique. There's a war raging in the northern part of Mozambique. And I was told that there are women soldiers out there who are fighting against the insurgents. That never used to be the case. Women are surging to the fore, and let us embrace the opportunities that women are getting into. Fourthly, we need to rebuild township and rural economies in an inclusive manner. These economies have forever been economies in the rural areas and in the townships that have just been serving like dormitories and not real serious economic engagement. We now need to focus on the rural areas and the urban and the townships. Fifthly, we must create an enabling policy environment. And sixthly, to encourage similar commitments in related industries. Now, if we can underpin our theory of change through doing these 6 things and clearly more, we will effectively be changing the structure of our economy. We will effectively be empowering the women of our country. Now, if effectively implemented, this theory of change, if it's implemented by all stakeholders, our actions will benefit not only the women of this country, but the whole economy. The whole economy will now begin to fire on all cylinders. 6 cylinders, 8 cylinders. That is when the economy of our country then begins to function and to function more effectively. It is through this that employment can be created. It is through this that production can be increased. And it is through this that we can accelerate economic growth. Now, I wish to encourage other industries and economic sectors to join this initiative and make their commitments and action plans for women empowerment. Now, sometimes I sit back and I think quite deeply about some of the things that happen in our country. This is, in my view, one of the very best ways of making sure that we foster the empowerment of women. And this is the very best way of making sure that we don't do the women of our country any favors. This is their right. This is the right of women, which we must make sure we give them. Now, I wish to commend all those industries and companies, as well as stakeholders, who are embarking on this journey together with us. I'd like to just say, let us use this assembly as a real turning point when it comes to the economic empowerment of women. There are various other areas that we need to address and attend to when it comes to the empowerment of women. It will be participation, yes, in government, participation in various institutions, all those. But it is the economic empowerment that, in my view, is eminently doable, and the time for us to do it is now. Let us demonstrate what is possible so that others may be encouraged and follow. And I'm so delighted that a number of key industrial CEOs and heads of various companies are here. I really am delighted because we can light this fuse. Let this fuse be lit, let this light be lit, and let us spread it around. Through this work, we are essentially going to be building a much better economy, a better society, and a better future, and a better life for the women of our country. Remembering that when we empower women, we are empowering the whole nation. Let's get on with it and get it done. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the clarion call from the President is loud and clear. We need to be firing from not 4, not 6, perhaps even 8 cylinders. And what that means is that we've got to unleash the power of the majority, and that is to unleash the power of women. This is the engine that's going to move South Africa forward. The President spoke about 6 very specific targets, which I'm sure are going to surface time and time again in the conversation that we're about to have. He also reminded us to massify, to scale, to be courageous in our decisions, and to make sure that we're not fiddling at the edges. The clarion call is to get to work, not only to empower women, but to empower the nation. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to our high-level presidential dialogue. It is my absolute pleasure at this moment to introduce Madame Futhi Mtoba, who is the co-chair of the National Strategic Plan of the Women Economic Assembly coordinating team. And she's going to join us to share an overview of the various industry master plans and what they reflect in terms of women